All right, let's go talk some NCAA basketball with Joey Ellis from Impact 89 FM, student radio station over at Michigan State. Joey, thanks for coming on Sayf at the Plate today.
Thanks for having me. It's been a little while.
Yeah, it has. Definitely like doing our collaborations here. First off, let's talk about Michigan State. They ended the season last week, the round of 32 loss to number 1 seed Kansas. Just your overall thoughts on that game in the season. Obviously, got one win in the NCAA tournament over Miami. Your thoughts?
I think definitely the season was definitely one of the more tricky seasons that I've seen Tom Izzo have to deal with. You've got three, sometimes at 4 times freshmen starting. You got one of them, Miles Bridges, who throughout the years he's wondering, is he gone after this year? Is he going to stay? And then, I think they, at times during the season, they showed great strides that they made throughout. Everybody playing really well together, and at other times they looked, just like they didn't all have it at the same time. They just couldn't find their identity. I thought heading into the NCAA tournament, I think against Miami, that was probably their most cohesive game that I've seen them play all season. And you had guys like Josh Langford stepping up. Cassius Winston had a great second half. These guys were all stepping up in big parts of the game, and I think that was the most dominant that I've seen them play. And then moving on to that Kansas game, they knew heading into that game it was going to be tough, and I think they would just be happy if you were just hanging around in that game. And for the most part, the good majority of that game, the score showed it was a close game. MSU cut it down to 1 with about 12 minutes to go, and Kansas, you could tell, was maybe sensing a little jitters, not trying to blow this game or anything. But then I think right after that, Josh Jackson kind of just took over, hit some big buckets, and just kind of too much that MSU didn't really have to match Kansas's big punch that they landed. But I think a lot of positives came out of that game. A lot of the freshmen made some plays in that game that are, they're encouraging going forward as sophomores and hopefully juniors and seniors, that they should be on a good foot.
Yeah, speaking of that, what does this program look like a year from now? Do you think there's going to take a step forward going into next year?
I think it's dependent, but not the biggest deal is about what Miles Bridges ends up doing. If he stays, he'd come back with Nick Ward, Cassius Winston, Josh Langford, all 3 of those guys who have played great with Miles all season. And I think that's a great sophomore class to kind of build around with some great guys coming in, a couple of recruits that they still are trying to lure in who could really help the program. But if Miles leaves, I think they still have a good blueprint to work with, and I think they could be a tough team to beat next year.
Yeah, if he comes back, they're going to be really dangerous. Obviously, one of the best players in the country as just a freshman this year. Now, the other team, other local team we're talking about around here that you also follow, talk about a little bit, is Michigan. Obviously, lost in the Sweet 16 to Oregon by 1. Yep. What are your thoughts on that game and their overall season as we look at it in hindsight now?
It's weird when they had that bad loss in Ann Arbor against Ohio State. I know a bunch of fans were in outrage. They were calling for Beilein's job, acting like the sky was falling. And then really after that game, they didn't look back, played some of the best basketball down the stretch that I've seen a team play. They blew through the Big Ten tournament, beating tough teams like Purdue, obviously. And then heading into the NCAA tournament, they dismantled a great Louisville team. And then I think in that Oregon game, it was on paper, I didn't see any way that Michigan was going to lose that game. They had the hot hand. I thought they just overall X's and O's were better than Oregon. And then during that game, some people say a missed rebound late in the game. They maybe didn't box out, and they could be looking at a different result. But I think they played a great game during that game. They just didn't get a couple of their shots that they normally would hit the fall. You have to credit Jordan Bell for Oregon. He's been a hustle player all tournament. He was great for the Ducks, and Michigan had a tough time containing him down low. But overall, it was a great season. I didn't expect their run to end right there. thought they'd at least get through one more round. But then, I mean, seeing how Kansas looked the next round, it's tough not to wonder what would happen if they had gotten through Oregon.
Yeah, if you're a Michigan fan, you got to be wondering, what if, like you said, looking at Kansas. But man, Oregon's playing really well. I think they really have a shot here coming into the next weekend. Now let's talk about the entire tournament as a whole. Definitely didn't shake out the way that a lot of people thought it would. Some trends kind of went different ways than expected. We're sitting here, Xavier made second weekend. Gonzaga makes their first Final Four. South Carolina makes their first one. Was it just that wide open field this year, or was it just some upsets?
Well, I think I said it all season long. The inconsistency of throughout the country and all teams was there. There wasn't one standout team like we've seen in the past, teams who were just number one from the start and they just ride that all the way through. There were some teams who would always hover near the top, but there was no standout team. So I knew this tournament was going to be really up for grabs for anybody. I thought, Xavier's always a team who comes into these tournaments and they normally will win at least one or two games every tournament, and now people are acting so surprised. But, I mean, when you look at that region, especially with Gonzaga, with Xavier, I think that was definitely the weaker region out of all of them when you have Gonzaga, who people thought it was the weakest one seed, and Arizona, who was a beatable team, as we've seen. But then South Carolina making a run. I mean, they've been a great team all season. Down the stretch, they've been playing great. And I think there was some upsets, yeah. I think the seeding had a big part to do with that. I think teams were seeded higher than they should have been in some instances, and so that kind of created some of the mismatches above the matchups. But I think it's just been kind of up for grabs, and it's been wide open, like you said.
Yeah, and speaking of the seeding, I mean, some of the things you look at with Wisconsin as an 8 seed, Michigan as a 7, even Purdue winning the Big Ten outright as a 4 was kind of seemed like a snub a little bit. Disrespect towards the Big Ten. They have 3 teams move in to the second weekend. The ACC only gets 1, so that was kind of an interesting caveat there to the tournament. Now we just 4 teams left, like we talked about: South Carolina, Gonzaga, Oregon, North Carolina. Definitely not the 4 that many people picked. I think it's less than 1% of brackets have this Final Four. Let's break down each team. I mean, what do you see from South Carolina? I think their defense is great. What do you see from the Gamecocks?
Yeah, like you said, their defense, that's kind of been their strong part all season, that they've prided themselves on their defense, especially their perimeter defense. I mean, against Duke, they virtually took away the three-point line. Duke was really struggling to get the shots that they normally will fall from deep, and they did the same thing there with Florida. Florida only shot 7 of 26 from 3 in that game. And I think South Carolina going forward, if they can shut down the perimeter defensively and they can get some offensive buckets and offensive rebounds and then get those second chance points, I think that's really where they've been hurting teams. And if Sindarius Thornwell, who's the SEC Player of the Year, if he keeps playing as well as he's been throughout this tournament and all season long, you got guys like PJ Dozier, Chris Silva, who had a big game, Mike Kotsar, he had a big game last game out. I think you've got a bunch of scorers on that team, and then defensively they're as good as anybody in the country. And I think they have, if they do what they've been doing well, I think they still have a chance to make their first national championship game.
Yeah, they're kind of an interesting team. I mean, everyone talks about every sport. It's always you grow up hearing defense wins championships, but that really hasn't been the case in the NCAA tournament. But we're seeing it this year with an elite defense, and then Sindarius Thornwell, who's putting up 20, 25 every night. So they're fun to watch. I think if they make the championship, they're going to be very tough to play against just because they can really shut you down in a big game. Let's move on to Gonzaga. First Final Four for Mark Few in the Zags. I mean, what do you see from them? A lot of people maybe haven't seen them throughout the season, but here they are as one of the top 4 teams left.
Yeah, this is a team that I had pinned as a Final Four team earlier on in the year. I think this is one of Mark Few's better, if not best, teams that he's had, maybe going back to the Adam Morrison Elite 8 teams that they had. But they've been great all year. I think in the tournament they struggled. They struggled especially securing defensive boards throughout the tournament. They've got Shannon Karnevsky, who's top 3, I'd say, top 3 big in the country. They also have a stud freshman, Williams, who can come right off the bench. So you don't really lose much depth there when Karnowski gets into foul trouble. But they did a better job grabbing those rebounds in Xavier. But, I mean, they still let Xavier get 13 offensive rebounds. In Gonzaga, I don't think can afford to give up as many second-chance points going forward. But Nigel Williams-Goss, finally, he's been playing. He played great last game out. 2 previous games he struggled, and I think they struggled because of it. But I think if Gonzaga can get some buckets early down low and kind of get the floor space, and then Williams-Goss, and you got Justin Williams and Jordan Matthews, they all have some room to operate. I think they're a really tough team to beat.
Yeah, like you said, I think I like their big men down low, and I think there's not many teams left that can really match that unless they play Oregon with Jordan Bell. You talked about him a little bit earlier. Obviously, they beat Michigan in the Sweet 16, like we talked about, and he's just a total beast down low. I think he had 8 or 9 blocks last game against Kansas, which really sparked them. Talk about the Ducks. What do we see from them coming out of the Midwest region?
I mean, they have scored. I mean, their offense has never been within question. I think they've been one of the best teams all country, all year in the country. And then when you have their best rim protector and Chris Boucher going down, I kind of question how they would do going forward. They've got guys like Tyler Dorsey, who had 27 last game out against Kansas. Against Rhode Island, he had 27. He had a big game against Michigan. You got Dylan Brooks, who's obviously the Pac-12 Player of the Year. He's one of the better pure scorers in the league. And then you've got Jordan Bell, who's he's just turned into an absolute monster for the Ducks down low. He's not the biggest guy, but he's just one of your hustle guys. He really does it all. He can score. He gets to the line. He rebounds, blocks shots, like you said. I think this team's as tough as it gets offensively. I think because of that, they always get off to these great starts, but I think they're going to have to continue to shoot as well as they have. And I think Jordan Bell needs to avoid foul trouble, especially against North Carolina, because they're not as deep down low as they normally would be with Boucher. But I like this team a lot if they can keep finding ways to get these shots to go down.
All right, then North Carolina, the last team, probably the only team that, was really one of those surefire kicks to get to the Final Four. A lot of people I see in bracket pools, they have North Carolina winning it all. Probably the only team out of these 4, Gonzaga is a 1 seed, but there were still some question marks there. North Carolina, the perennial power, they're back in the Final Four. What do you see from them?
Yeah, this was the team starting from the season I had winning it all. I think they're the best team in the country. I think they're polished all around. I think they especially have to keep trying to get to the free throw line like they did against Kentucky. North Carolina, they were 18 to 26 from the line. But then in that game, they also let Kentucky get to the line for 19 attempts. So I think they can't rely on Oregon getting the line as many times. They have to control that, get to the line as much as they can. They've got the ACC Player of the Year, Justin Jackson. I think him and Joel Berry, they can't combine to shoot 1 of 10 from three-point range again like they did last game out against Kentucky. They're definitely going to have to find their shots and get some good spacing offensively. But then I just think where they have the mismatch against any team, maybe not Gonzaga, is their front court. Kennedy Meeks and Isaiah Hicks. Meeks had a huge game out last game, and he had 17 boards. I mean, he's a double-double machine. You think he's going to get his 10 and at least 10 every game. And I just think for Oregon that it's too much of a mismatch. Bell's going to have to try to find a way to stay out of foul trouble while defending both of those bigs. And I think North Carolina will just have the edge down low especially.
All right, so sounds like you like North Carolina there. Joey Ellis here joining us from Impact 89 FM over at Michigan State. So Monday night, sounds like you like North Carolina. Who do you like between South Carolina and Gonzaga to get to that championship game?
I like Gonzaga. I think South Carolina, by no means would I be surprised if they found a way to just keep this run going. It's kind of similar to that 2008 UConn 7-seed run that they had, ended up winning it. But I think Gonzaga will just finally figure this out and they'll start boxing out more down low, which they've been struggling in. I think they should limit South Carolina. You would like to under 10 offensive boards, and I think they'll pressure South Carolina more on the perimeter, and then that'll force South Carolina into some more contested shots from Thornwell and guys like Dozier. And I think Matthews on the other end will be able to knock down some key jumpers, and Williams-Goss, if he keeps playing at a high level. I just think Gonzaga is the better team, and I think they really have a great chance at winning.
So you got the 2-1 seeds, Gonzaga and North Carolina.
Yep.
Monday night in the national championship game. Who takes that one?
I got North Carolina. I think that'll be a slugfest. And you got two great front courts. They'll be going at it down low. The guard play is going to be great as well. I think the X factor in that game is going to be Theo Pinson, Justin Jackson. Pinson kind of does it all for the Tar Heels. He set up the game-winning shot yesterday against Kentucky. I think Jackson has to really get it going offensively from the start. I mean, he's ACC Player of the Year. He needs to show up in the biggest games. I just think North Carolina has been the best team all year. I think Gonzaga is a great team. I think it'll be a great game, but I think at the end of the day, North Carolina will find a way to get it done.
All right, so you got the Tar Heels winning that matchup, winning it all, avenging last year's national championship game loss. It's been a great tournament. 3 games left. Looking back on the tournament that was, looking ahead at the 3 games that remain, just any final thoughts on this March Madness that has been pretty crazy?
Yeah, and like you said, it has been crazy. I think this is the NCAA tournament that I've watched the most. I mean, I've been able to catch pretty much at least parts of every game, and every game minus a few have been competitive all throughout, top to bottom. They come right down to the wire. The Final Four is interesting. I mean, I don't know anybody before the season would have pegged these 4 teams to make it there. You've got only one coach with over a minute coached in a Final Four experience with Roy Williams. The other 3 all making their Final Four debuts. So I think it's been exciting, and this is exactly what the March Madness lives for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to see. I mean, like you said, new faces in the Final Four. None of these coaches, Frank Martin, Mark Few, Dana Altman, none of them have been to a Final Four, and here's their moment right here on Saturday night, so that's going to be interesting to watch for. Now, just last thing, obviously you're covering Michigan State football and basketball and a lot of other things, but any spring football updates, any rumblings out of Mark Antonio's camp as they move along here in spring ball?
Yeah, the spring game's scheduled to be this coming Saturday on the 1st. I heard some rumors going around that there was a chance that they were thinking about kind of suppressing the media from the spring game like they did in the pro day, but it seems like that's not the case. Should be open. Like I said, they did. Pro day was shut down to media. I don't know how I felt about that. I think there's more to the football program than being able to dodge questions about 3 potential suspended players, like quarterback battles, how seniors are going to fit this year. But I think there's a lot of question marks heading into the spring game, especially from last season. It's going to be who's under center at quarterback. I think heading into that game, it's going to be Brian Lewerke. I think he's the most clear-cut chance at starting quarterback this year and being the guy going forward under center. But we'll see on Saturday.
All right, Joey Ellis from Impact 89 FM over at Michigan State. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you again soon.
All righty, sounds good. Thank you.